Today we're going to work on some wiring. So we need to add a clutch pedal switch. So on the ECU connector, so you can do this actually without even removing the ECU. This is the big connector. Pull this back and that'll make it slide off. So the back shell here is held on at the far end with just some hooks, and then there's a couple tabs, one on each side. So there's a zip tie, the strainer releases it, and you just gotta slide a little screwdriver in here at the end on both sides, and that pops forward. So the clutch switch, we need pin 39. So not sure if you can see, but there's reference numbers at the top and bottom. So you just gotta look, you gotta count out to number 39. It should be an empty pin, but the connector is full of the pins, so you just need to remove the pin from that spot, and then you can crimp it onto the terminal or onto your new wire. But there's a safety catch on here on the front side, that locks all the terminals into place. So that little purple bar, you need a little pin tool, slide it in the center, and then use a little screwdriver to pry that out. Then that'll unlock all the pins, so then you can remove them. So pin 39, and then it's gonna route somewhere. I haven't quite decided that yet. Looks like there's a penetration at the back of the ECU TCU box that goes into the cabin, and then maybe route it on the back side. Otherwise, I guess you could route it out of here and through the heater box. And there's a, on the pedal cage here, there's a little rubber plug, which is for the 32 valve cars. That's where the cable throttle comes through. You could, route it through there, just make sure it seals properly, and that'll be right there at the clutch pedal for you. So, haven't decided which route I'm gonna go yet, but once I do, I'll show it to you. After you remove this purple lock strip, there's a double row of terminals, and if looking at those reference numbers stamped on the outside of the connector, look for the one that has 39 in it. I forget what numbers these say, but it goes from like 25 to 40 on the inner row. So you can kind of pull lightly on the wires, and this whole terminal block will pop out. And on there is the numbers. So on this side, it goes from 6 to 24. So it's actually going to be the back side that we want. It goes from 25 to 43. So, counting backwards, 43 to 40, 39. So 39 is going to be that blank pin in between a black and red and a white and black wire. So there's a pin already in there, and those pins are held in at the forward part here, and you'll need to use very small screwdriver or a pointer to kind of apply some sideways pressure, and then you can release the pin and remove it. And then you'll want to use a wire crimper to crimp that pin on properly. Okay, pin's out, and you can see 39, which is, you know, now the one with no pin. Here, I got it here. Hopefully that focuses. And these use a pretty low gauge wire. Oh, probably like 20 or something. And it actually looks like you don't strip the wire at all. It's kind of like those really crappy vampire splices, but so you don't strip it, and it has two different bite points, but then you do crimp the strain relief at the very end of the pin. So I'll go find a proper size wire and one that's nice and long to go reach over the clutch pedal. And then I guess, yeah, it seems like it's kind of similar to like Ethernet cable, if you've ever done that. So it's more of a punch down method. So I'll punch the wire down and then use a small crimper to do the strain relief. And if you happen to drop this or screw up the crimp, the good thing is there's a whole bunch of empty pins that are there waiting for you as spares. So how nice of Audi and Volkswagen or Bosch or whoever made the wiring to fully populate the connectors, so you don't have to go and find these. Got my pin crimped and installed. The only like spool of wire, or the thinnest spool of wire I had was like an 18 gauge, which was way too thick, so I found some wire off of old harness from a car I parted, which it's always good to keep wiring harnesses around for connectors, for wires, just like this. So I've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet. Hopefully should be long enough. So I got that on the pin, put it back into 39, and use some lock stitch to tie that to the main bundle here. So this is a trick I've learned working in the aerospace industry. Sometimes called like lacing tape. So this is like a coated fabric string that it's grippy, so it grips on itself when you tie it. I think it's flame resistant. I don't know if this is made of Nomex or something. Doesn't chafe on the wires, doesn't provide any hard plastic for bundles to chafe on. So this is how they build aircraft harnesses. In fact, it was actually only a couple years ago, I think, where they finally approved the use of zip ties on aircraft in certain situations. So I like this lacing tape. You just kind of buy a bundle. It's not too expensive, and this lasts literally forever. And it makes things nice and clean. There's no, people that don't know how to cut zip ties, leave sharp edges, and cut your hands, and you don't have the bulk of that connector. So it's just a nice way to clean up wiring harnesses. So I will bundle this back a little further and then start investigating how I want to route this into the cabin. So way down there, let's see if the light, you can see, maybe you can see the passes through grommet or something. I don't know if that's going to require removing the glove box to kind of get to that area. I guess we'll see. Hopefully I can just reach up through the floor well, behind the insulation, and then route it from here over to the driver's side. So, stand by. Oh, and one other note. So, you know, when you crimp that on, and then even whenever you crimp anything, always do a continuity check. So take the other end, strip a little bit off, and then do a continuity check between the bare end and the pin end. Wiggle them, make sure that, you know, there's no loss in continuity. I had an issue with the reverse light harness on the trans that I built. The little injector connector for the reverse light. I didn't get the pin crimped enough. So thankfully I tested it and realized, oh, hey, I don't actually have continuity here. So I had to take apart the connector and re-crimp it. So always double check. Wire is down through that hole. It's kind of a pain with the really thin gauge wire. Let me see, do I still have it? What I did was take a little piece of thicker wire and bent the end around, and then taped the wire to this with some Scotch tape, so then there's no sharp edge to catch on anything. The wire had been longer. Pushed it down, but you don't want to pull it back up because, you know, there's that hook on there. You don't want to grab anything. So pushed it through and then cut the top and then pulled it all the way through and then pulled the wire. So good news is you don't have to remove the glove box. It just kind of comes in. It's kind of a pain, but it comes up behind this insulation, and there's a wooden kick panel there that you got to remove. So now I will try and route this up over there, over the trans tunnel, and over to the clutch pedal. And then I'll show you what we need to do. So this is just one of the two wires. So the other wire you need to route to the brake pedal switch. So I'll show you which one to do there. All right, another tip, since I am an acoustical engineer, NVH, noise, vibration, harshness, is something very near and dear to my heart, and this Audi tried very hard to make this car very quiet, so I want to keep that. And one of the things is, you know, so you've got this big TCU connector, and if you just kind of lay it in here, it's bound to rattle around, and that's gonna make noise. So over here where the TCU headset, just throw in some bubble wrap, shove that down in there. Now it's not gonna make any noise. So I was trying to find some like foam tape or something, but I didn't have any bubble wrap. That'll do just fine. Working on clutch wiring. So got my wire routed over. I routed it underneath the radio, the HVAC. Ignore my really bad wiring. Well, not my wiring. Wiring of a previous owner for retrofitting the navigation and like this add-on Bluetooth kit. Eventually I'm gonna redo that and try and find a Bluetooth, I don't know, maybe a factory module that integrates with the nav unit, versus before they kind of had one mounted to the trim here. I mean, it was nice, it worked. It's nice to have, it was only Bluetooth phone, but it plugged into the speaker in the center console, and it would pause the music, and it integrates really well, but there's just like 4 different modules to have to do with that. But anyways, let's get back to clutch switch. So you got your brake switch connector there. This is your brake switch, clutch switch. So you have a couple options. You can use a brake switch. There's 2 circuits on the brake switch. Just choose one of them. I got I think this is a brake switch from a beef. I forgot something. So clutch switch, 2 contacts, and you ran one from the ECU. Where's the other one go? So you need to tap that off of the brake switch circuit, and you want the black and yellow. So I think that's hot. I thought it might be a switched ground, but I think when I checked the Bentley, it's actually a hot wire, so you're triggering the ECU with positive instead of ground. But I think on other cars, so basically it's pretty similar on like B5s. You just want of the smaller pins, you want the darker wire, which on this one it's black and yellow. I think on other ones it might be black and blue, but I double checked that in the Bentley, and that's what you want. All right, time to do coding. So got Rosstech VCDS up and got my notes. So this is OneNote, and if you've never heard of it, you should. So this is Microsoft Office product, so if you have Word, Excel, etc., you probably already have it. It's free to download if you own that, and it's a way to just kind of organize notebooks. So, you know, here I have my 2003 S8, but if I go up, I've got kind of notebooks for every car, and in each of those I just have all kinds of notes about anything you want. So this is how I document all of my swaps. So like, here's a bunch of parts diagrams I had shown to figure out all the OEM parts, some other conversion threads where I saved out a bunch of pictures. One of the cool things is if you ever copy and paste something, it will, you know, paste it, and then it'll also show you a link at the bottom that says where it's from. So you can always kind of go back to that web page. So something I pulled off Quattro World, and it says we need to code the ABS to 08395 using login 05495. So let's go to VCDS, select the control module. We're going to go to ABS. Is that connected? I'm going to close out of here so I can rearrange this, just so I can see my nose. Alright, bringing up the ABS module. And this is when you turn the key on, it's giving all different kinds of errors there. So there's lots of beeping. So I think we go to coding. So there's the keys. So it's currently 08397, which is Audi A8, dual piston Brembos, 3, 8-cylinder, and then the last one is automatic is 7, and we want to switch that to 5. Sorry, phone's blowing up. Howdy guys, wanted to chat. Yeah, so I'm going to change from 08397 to 08395 to let the ABS know that's the manual transmission. So, seems like it took it. Let's go to coding again. No, it didn't. So, we might have to put a login, and so login using 05495. 05495. Okay. Now we can go to coding. We might have to do that. Do the login workshop code underneath. Oh, no. There, now it took it. So 08395. Okay. The ABS is set. So now we need to change the engine soft coating to 10713, which is going to be Euro 3 emissions, because we changed the tune to the Euro tune. It's going to be all-wheel drive with traction control, manual trans, and D2A S8. Now I believe if you wanted to turn off traction control, you can via the engine coding here. So we are currently at 06, which must be US emissions, 7 for all-wheel drive, 5 must be automatic, and 3 is D2A S8, and we want to change this to 10713. Do it. And go back to coding and double check 10713. Okay. That's good. We're going to close the controller. So that should be those. Let's double check. So key off. Key on. I got lots of warning things. Wonder if since the trunk's open, it's not gonna tell me to clutch in. Let me go check that. All right, let's try that again. Still not getting clutch message. I thought somebody said it would do that, but I guess we don't have the park display anymore, so let's give it a start. Ignore my airbag light. I know it's an issue. It's a seat occupancy switch. But, so we don't have ABS lights or ESP. And so I also fixed my rubbing, so let's check that. All right. Wheels are now turning and no rubbing. Perfect. All right. So now I just got to button things up. Put this interior back together. I got my carbon trim, so I'm going to install that. Then we're going to take this for a test drive and bring you along. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Alright, still at it with VCDS. I just was going through things and make sure, my notes said, just to change the engine module and the ABS module. But I wasn't getting that clutch in setting, so I was like, do I need to do anything with the cluster? So this is S4 wiki, so this is for B5 swaps. They mention changing the cluster to tell it to not look for the transmission module. So if you run the fault codes on the cluster currently, so I just cleared them, this one reoccurred. So it's saying it can't find the TCU. So S4 wiki says to set channel 60 to 1025. So I go to 60 you read it, it's at 1035. Change it to 1025. Test. And then it's save. Okay. Let's read it again. 1025. Okay, so that took it. So I'm going to key off. Key back on. So I still get those ABS beeps at the start. In the notes of VCDS, it says you need to recalibrate the steering sensor after that. So I think that'll kind of go away after I go drive it for a bit and get it recognizing all the wheel speed sensors again. So let's check the cluster. Let's look for fault codes. Clear them. Let's go back. Read them again. Okay, I have this fault codes for telematics, which is normal. I think that's the old OnStar system, or it's the fact that I removed navigation, but okay. That's to be expected. So, still don't get a clutch warning. I wonder if it'll let me start without it. Yeah, so it still will. But I know my switch is working, so you can verify that. Oh, sorry. Turn the car off. If you go to the engine module, ignore the door chime for a second. So I'm sitting outside the door. And we go to measuring blocks. If we go to channel 66. So this brake switch position. So that's really brake and clutch. Sorry. Please ignore the chime. So that third to the last digit, that 1 is actually the clutch switch. So if I press it down, it goes to 0 and back up. And the last 2 zeros are the clutch, or the brake. That's the initial test switch, and that's the full-on brake light switch. So you can see if I do clutch in, it goes to all zeros, brake test, and then brake light, and then clutch out. So that all works. So the engine module is at least seeing the clutch. I don't know if it's supposed to not start with the clutch. Maybe that's the starter interlock that we jumpered from the Auto Trans. But anyways, figured I'd show that. I don't know if I've got too many warning lights. I got the brake pads unplugged and low coolant and door open. I don't know if I'll actually get that depressed clutch to start. We'll find out. If not, oh well. Hey guys, it's been a few days. I know I promised a driving video, but the car hasn't been driving that great. But I finally figured it out. So I was having issues where kind of right at tip-in, as you're pressing the accelerometer, it would kind of stumble. And I think I talked about it where it would kind of start to judder, and then that would cause your foot to judder, and then like just the whole car would just buck and act really weird, and you have to get off of it and shift in the next gear. Then had intermediate rev hanging, so sometimes the revs when you clutch in wouldn't fall, sometimes they go up, sometimes they'd fall like a rock, and it just wasn't very consistent. So wasn't sure what was going on, but I wanted to check to make sure, okay, well, maybe my clutch switch wasn't working. But I'd done it, and I have the video to say, oh, hey, look, that value's changing as it's opening and closing. What I didn't notice was it was the wrong value. So when the clutch is out and the switch is closed, it should show 0. However, mine was showing 1. So this is supposed to be the right part. It's supposed to be the 8D0 number. There's a clutch switch and a brake switch that look the exact same, but they're different whether they're normally open or normally closed. Now, so this brake switch is supposed to be, I believe they call it normally closed, which so when the clutch is depressed, that you should have continuity between the 2 pins. Now, this was not the case, or it was backwards. Anyways, I forget what it's supposed to be, but this was not it. So I grabbed a brake pedal, and this has 2 circuits, big pins, little pins. Now the big pins were the same as my clutch pedal, but the little pins were the opposite. So I just put in one of these, made some little pigtails to connect to the current wiring on the smaller pins, and lo and behold, my clutch switch acted properly. So with the clutch out, reads 0, clutch in, reads 1. Same as the brake switch. So the brake should read 0 when it's out, and then as you press on it, the first little bit should show that brake test switch, which shows a 1. As you depress a little more, then it's the actual brake light that turns on. So double check that if you're having issues. So at the same time, I also didn't have cruise control working. So I figured, oh, okay, well that's got to be because of the clutch switch. But I swapped the clutch switch, still didn't work. Do a bunch of reading, and people were talking about how you could have a new drive-by-wire ECU that doesn't have it activated. So I'll show you some screenshots or some pictures of my screen. And when you log into the engine module where it says components, like I think mine says V8-5V for 5 valve, but after that there should be a G, which means cruise control activated. Mine didn't have that. So in order to do that, you go to login, which is number 11 on VCDS, and then you type in 11463 and then do it. And you might have to exit out of the controller, cycle the ignition, but then when you get it, you should have that G there next in the component field, and then cruise control works. And once I got the clutch switch working, even though I didn't have cruise control working, it drove like a completely different car. No issues with throttle oscillation. Also, before, when I was clutching in and trying to blip the car to shift gears and rev match, I'd really have to stab at the throttle. I'd sometimes have to do it twice for the car to even rev. Well, that kind of makes sense now because it thought the clutch was out when I was pushing the clutch in, and it's not supposed to react to quick movements and throttle. But then, the reverse, it then has, it's thinking that the clutch is in, but then the clutch was actually out, and it's trying to make those quick throttle adjustments for rev matching. So after all that, it now makes sense. But glad I got it figured out and document this for all of you guys. And now I'm going to make a driving video because it's awesome. It's so much better. Super happy now. And hopefully you do it too, because this is how these cars were meant to be made. And it sucks that they didn't make them in the US like this. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.